Hi, I'm Kendra from Redgate, and in this video, we're going to talk about managing conflicts with an example tool, SQL Source Control. I have a SQL Source Control Git repo set up. We're talking about Git today, and I happen to have this set up in Azure DevOps Services. You could be using a different Git repo if you like. This just happens to be the hosted Git option that I'm using. And we've got a main branch here. Now, when we're starting off, upstream in the main branch, I've got some really meaningfully named tables here. The table named 2 has 2 columns in it. It has an I and a J column. The J column is in care 10. Starting off. And what we're going to do is we're going to create an example conflict and talk about how to handle that. So down here, what I've actually done locally is I've cloned that same Git repo twice. You can actually, with a Git repo, you can clone it down to as many places as you'd like. And I've actually cloned it down to 2 different folders and associated with 2 different databases. This allows me to pretend to be 2 people. So one person 1 is working in Learn Get SQL Source Control. The other person is working in Learn Get SQL Source Control 2. Now, Learn Get SQL Source Control 2 was where I just made a change that added that J column. And I pushed that commit to main. So in our SQL Source Control project here, I'm just working in this one here. And we can see in SQL Source Control at the top right that I am in the main branch. Now I'm going to advocate not always working in your mainline branches. I'm going to advocate working in topic branches and using a pull request workflow to merge into main. But first I want to show you just what happens if you are working in a shared branch. The truth is that it doesn't actually matter what the name of this branch is. Working in a shared branch can lead to unexpected or unplanned interrupts in Git that can kind of take you out of your workflow, and then you don't get the other benefits of pull requests. So let's say starting out here in this column 2, I don't have that column J. And maybe there's been kind of a miscommunication. Maybe I thought I was the one who was supposed to add column J, and I thought J was supposed to be in care 12, right? So a slightly different length, right? So same column name, different column definition. Now I made this change in the table designer. You could do it in T-SQL. You could do it however you like. But what I do is I go to this commit tab, and SQL Source Control checks my database. It checks what's in Source Control, and it says you have a change to import here. You've added the column J to this table, and in the latest version we have in Source Control, because here's the critical bit, I didn't pull down the latest stuff from Source Control. Since Git is distributed Source Control, and we all work in local copies and push and pull from the repo, it's easy for us to get out of sync, and this is even a good thing. We don't necessarily want to have to be in sync to work. We want to be able to merge our changes, but we want to be able to work independently of each other at our own speeds. And maybe we have complementary changes. Maybe we're adding different columns to this table, and it's helpful to do that asynchronously. So that's not a bad thing. So it may just be that I forgot to pull down this change, or it could even be kind of a race condition thing, right? Maybe that we're working on it simultaneously, and that commit gets pushed up to the repo right before I do it. Right? Maybe it's hard for me to get that copy of the repo as the basis of my work. So in any case, I am working off a slightly older version of what's in main, but I'm going to go ahead and commit this. I'm going to say adding column J to dbo.2, check off my object I'm going to commit, and I say, okay, I'm going to commit. All right. So I have now committed to my local repo in Git, and it says, oh, well, something you can push. Would you like to push? Okay, I would like to push to the remote repo. And it says this has failed. You are unable to push. Something you're trying to update has commits that are not present locally. And you can arrow down here and read more. You can copy the message to the clipboard, which I just did. I'm going to open a new window. Control N, there we go, and just use, SQL Server as a notepad here so you can read. You can get the full error text there. And it's just the get error here. Updates were rejected because your current branch is behind its remote counterpoint, right? The sentence clears here. Integrate the changes, i.e. pull before pushing again. All right, well, let's go to pull. Now, depending on what the conflict is, sometimes this will be an easy thing to resolve. I click pull. It says, do you really want to pull? You don't have to see that every time if you don't want. And I pull. Now, if we had changed, say, different files, this might be able to automatically be merged. It might be really simple. In this case, it's not that simple. We've actually failed to execute the command get pull progress. Right? So I try to pull again, pull all changes. And this time, if I do it twice, I actually get a little more detail. It is conflicted. I feel conflicted, right? What's happened is we have a merge conflict that can just be automatically resolved. Now, one thing we can do, again, I'm going to advocate for a different workflow, but if you do end up in this position, you can work with it. You can open the repo in something like VSCode. Now, let me go ahead and close this. To open this in VSCode, and I'm using VSCode as an example because it's free. It has not only a built-in, this is the built-in Get extension. You also can install secondary extensions that are really cool. I have this free one called GitLens. This is the icon for it there that can provide really powerful functionality that helps you learn. I find that I like using the Git command line, but I do find that these help me learn and work with Git, and it's nice and free. So how do I open my SQL Source Control project here? Well, if I don't have a folder open and I click on the Git extension icon here, it says, oh, well, you need to open the folder containing your local copy of the repo that you'd like to work with. So I'm going to open, here's the one. I have to remember I cloned down 2 copies of it. So I'm going to just open the one where I have the conflict. So now that I have this open, we can see I have a little 1 here on the Get extension. I'm going to click on the extension and we can see, oh, it's got something about merging in here, right? So I do have the option of resolving the conflict within the same branch. The reason it'll work. I can go into the merge here. Notice it says I have a C here. I have a conflict on this file. I can use this little menu that shows up in this file here to say whether I want to accept the current change, my change, whether I want to overwrite it with the incoming change, and I can review it all here, whether I want to do something and accept both or compare more. After figuring out what I want to do, I can then stage the change. This little plus button here will stage the file. In other words, it kind of adds it, prepares it to be committed. Staging is a useful feature because maybe if you're working in some kinds of projects, maybe you've modified 5 things, but you only want to commit 3. You could only stage 3, right? Here we have 1 thing and we would want to stage, and then we could commit it. And we could use it. We could simply, this is a default commit message here. We could edit it if we want. Control Enter will then commit everything we've staged. So we could resolve the merge here. That will work. And then we could push up to the repo. But the reason that I would rather do a different workflow is a couple things. One, this happens as an interrupt if we're working in shared branches. Sometimes when I push or pull, I run into an error. And sometimes it's a conflict where I have to open this other tool and resolve it. It's not always clear when that's going to happen. So it's always going to feel kind of like, I wasn't planning for this. But also the other reasons is like, which of us was right about the column length here? This is an important communication thing. And this should just happen in a regular code review. For all of the changes that I want to get into my more mainline branches, maybe these mainline branches are automatically deploying to the QA or an integration environment, for example. For all the changes I merge into there, I should really have a process of getting a review, maybe running an automatic build, maybe running some tests, right? These things should happen. And working in feature branches, also known as topic branches, and then doing a process of just regularly working in those branches, it frees us up to do a lot of things. We can commit often and push up to the repo often because we're doing it in our own feature branch. That code isn't just going to deploy to the integration environment. I mean, maybe we could set something up where if we want to build all feature branches so that people get feedback from that build, we could do that, but we don't have to. We can do what we want. But we can frequently commit our changes. We can push them up to the repo. We can even share them with other people in a safe way. You can say, hey, I'm going to pull that feature branch down and look at it. So there's lots of flexibility, basis for automation, good feedback, lots of good things. So in other words, we can resolve these same branch conflicts if we want. I don't necessarily think they're the best way to work. So I'm going to click here on my little GitLens icon. And GitLens, GITLENS is what this is. It's a really powerful tool. And I'm just going to go here. It'll show me the history of my branches. So I'm in the main branch, and I am one commit behind and one commit ahead. I just did, adding column J to DBO.2. So I'm going to redo my workflow again. I'm going to travel back in time a little bit. So I'm going to click on this previous commit here. I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to say I want to reset to this commit. And this is what I mean about how I think it helps you learn. It lets me know, if you want to reset to this commit, there are a couple different ways you could do this. You could do a soft reset or a hard reset. It gives me a little explanation here. Of course, tons of documentation on Git online. I can always look up for this. In this case, I am totally fine discarding the changes I made because this is just a demo environment. There's no big deal here, and I can, recommit there. So I'm going to say hard reset. And notice I have my little terminal down here. It says, hey, this is what GitLens is doing. And it shows me the actual commands that it runs for that. I like that. The DBA in me likes having an audit trail of things. So anyway, so this head is now at this point. There we are. All right, so I'm going to go back over into my SQL Source Control environment. And I'm back at the commit tab here. And then I go to the Git Latest tab here. Now you may notice that the Git Latest tab here is saying something that might seem a little backwards. I've actually kind of confused SQL Source Control a little bit because I've gone backwards in time. It says you've got in your database this column J, where is what I saw, the last thing I looked at in Source Control, or the thing I see in Source Control now. We went back to a point where Source Control says that column J isn't there. So what it thinks we need to do is it actually thinks that we need to, like I am on the thing, it wants to apply the latest Source Control version to the database. And this is just because I did that weird thing of going back in time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Setup tab. I'm going to quickly unlink from Source Control. And I'm going to relink. And again, this is only because I went back in time in SQL Source Control. If I didn't go to backwards in time, it wouldn't get, because like going backwards in time, it's kind of like it's in this situation. How does it know which is the right version, the Source Control version or your database version? Because I didn't have an established basis of Source Control. Like I just went way back in time and it sees this difference. And it's like, well, I think you should probably apply the Source Control to your database. So I'm going to go to the commit tab here. And it looks at things and it's like, okay, now this is like we're just starting out with Source Control. What it sees now, this is kind of an interesting situation we're putting it in, is now it's like, ooh, okay, I see a conflict. You haven't committed your change yet, right? But I see Source Control. This is exactly what we saw before. It's just being presented on a different tab. Source Control doesn't have that column. Your database does have that column. So I'm going to say, okay, I do want to keep mine in this situation. This essentially just kind of resets me. So I'm adding column J. And now I'm going to commit that. Maybe not the best commit message there, right? So now I'm back in this situation where I've actually done this. I did this commit in the main branch. Ideally, I would have been working in a feature branch this whole time. It's all right. We'll live locally. But I have added column J, and I made it in char 12. But we're still in a situation where up in the repo, it is a different story, right? Up in the repo, it is, and I think I actually managed to, there we go. I was like, did I close that window? No, I didn't close that window. Up in the repo, column J is in char 10. So we're starting the demo over fresh. What if I had been working in a feature branch? Well, how do I work in a feature branch? Now, if I go into my Get client itself, and I'm going to close out these windows just so things are a little clearer. Now, I've gone into Visual Studio, and here I'm just on this Git command here. Now, one cool thing about what this tells me right away is if I look down here, here's the branch I'm on. I'm on main. And it's done something called fetch to look at the upstream repo. So it actually knows, hey, there's actually something up there you haven't pulled down yet. Gives me a little indicator of that. It also knows about my one commit that I haven't pushed up there. Let's say we want to actually not work in that shared branch. We're like, oh, I need to work in my own private branch. So I can do git checkout to, and I can create a new branch. And I can type the name of the branch in here. By default, it will create the branch based on where you're working now, right? Right now, I am working on the main branch, and I'm a little bit behind the upstream repo, and I've also committed something there. So what I did to get there is I did Control-Shift-P to get to the command palette and then type get, right? Because what it's showing in the top here is my recently used commands here. So the more you use git commands, the more they'll show up in the list. But if you haven't used them recently, you just type git to get the commands there. If you forget to use the command palette or you just aren't used to it yet, in the menu up here, there is a checkout to, and checkout means checking out another branch. So we are going to say checkout to, and we can say create a new branch. So we'll call this topic 1 branch. Now, you're not really allowed to put spaces in the names there. I even put a space at the end. Notice that it very politely replaced all my spaces with dashes for me. So now in topic 1 branch, if I go back to SQL Source Control and I just refresh here, notice that, I am where this is pointed to the folder where I'm also working in Visual Studio. If I change the branch in Visual Studio, it's also changing the branch in here. If I push in Visual Studio, right, where both SQL Source Control and Visual Studio are just looking at the same folder that I have locally in my Windows install, and they're working with Git in that. So it's just 2 Git clients who are essentially using the same folder is what's happening here. So I can create my upstream branch and push in SQL Source Control, or I could click, push in here in Visual Studio. And similarly, they have just slightly kind of different ways of phrasing this. It's, oh, do you want to create the upstream branch? Would you like to publish is the word it uses. So I say, okay, let's create that upstream branch. Now, my upstream branch, of course, is a little bit out of sync. I could do a couple things. I could go ahead and create my pull request on the upstream branch, at which point it's going to do a comparison, and notice I have a conflict, right? So if I forget to check before then, that's fine. But I also might want to proactively, before I create the pull request, I might want to proactively see, oh, what branch am I going to merge into? If I'm going to merge into a branch named main, I may want to proactively check for my topic 1 branch, my badly named topic 1 branch. Can I go ahead and just proactively check, has anything merged into main or been committed to main since I started my work? And can I go ahead and merge it in now and handle that conflict? So I can go here, I can say get merge branch, right? That's also in the menu over here. Everything's in multiple places, so you can go to the branch. Let's see if I can zoom while that's highlighted. I can go to the branch menu here and say merge branch. Either way, I think it's actually really helpful because one of the things that's easy to forget is, oh, when I run merge, which way does it go? And I really, really like that it does this. It says select the branch to merge from. When you merge, the branch you are in, you're going to merge things into where you are. So you're always going to say merging into where I am, right? And I think this language, select the branch to merge from, helps point out you're going to merge to where you are. So you're really picking that thing that you're merging into where you are now. I want to merge from the upstream, from the origin main, right? Not necessarily like, I mean, I could check out main. I could pull main down, and then I could merge from my local main into where I am. That is a valid option. I just have to do a few commands there. But I do have the option here to say I want to merge from origin main into where I am now. I'm going to say get merge branch, and then I can say origin main. Now, right here at the bottom, it says, hey, there are merge conflicts. You should resolve them before committing. If you would like to read the Git log, more power to you. You totally can. Or you can just, as we were looking at earlier, go over here to the Git extension and look for where there are conflicts. I have a little C here. It is on this dbo.to table. So this is really similar to when we were merging in the same branch. The difference is that we aren't, we purposefully said we wanted to do the merge here. We got to decide when was the right time for us to think about that and do it on purpose. It wasn't just, something went wrong when I pulled or pushed, right? So we got to do it on purpose. It can happen at a workflow that's right for us. And I just think it flows better. All right, so what do we want to do? Well, we have two columns named J, and we do have some responsibility here to make sure that we are doing the right thing, right? So if I wasn't sure what the right thing was here, I might actually want to, pause here, pause the whole thing, and just be like, it's important whether or not I overwrite your change. I need to have a conversation here. Maybe I actually want to create a pull request up on the repo and pull in the person who did the other change and use the pull request for that conversation before I resolve the conflict. That can be valid too. It's just about whatever communication works better in your team. Maybe I just have a quick Slack conversation, right? But obviously we can't have two columns in the same table named J with different definitions. SQL Server just won't let us have that. And this is part of why it's good to have things like automatic builds, like SQL Source Control. If you put invalid stuff in there too, it'll also try to validate it. But also having something like having a valid build with SQL change automation that happens as part of that pull request workflow, that happens as part of the deploy to an integration environment. Like, because you can change the text files saved by SQL Source Control, it's always good to make sure that it's doing what you want. So which of these is right? Let's say that in this case, the incoming change is right. I'm going to go ahead and say accept incoming change on this one. Okay, they were actually right. Now, one other thing to note is that I can also make other changes to this file. And by the way, I just automatically clicked Control S without even thinking about it because I am an auto saver. You do need to save this file once you make your decision about what to do there. Let's say that I suddenly was like, actually, we were both wrong. It should be in varchar 10. Like, VSCode will let you save this change. But of course, we have not applied this to our database. And if we do go around, whatever we do to this file, right, because I have just accepted an incoming change, let's take it back to, actually, let's leave it as in varchar 10. That's an interesting example. I am now going to go ahead and stage this change, and I'm going to go ahead and commit this. I'm going to say merge origin main into my topic, right? I'm going to do Control Enter to commit. That's one way to commit. If you forget Control Enter, there's always the menu options for committing things as well. So I'll do Control Enter there. Looking at this menu, right, there's a whole commit message there too. All right, so if you're ever curious what's happened, I often get confused about what I've done. Anyway, the GitLens extension is really, really nice in terms of helping you step through the history of things. So we can look at the history of this here. What does this say? dbo.to, where this was where that happened. Oh, actually, this is the main branch here. I am in my topic branch. So I'm looking right now at the history of main to look at what I just did. I need to be where I am. I am in my topic branch. So GitLens is powerful. It can help you explore the history of different branches. Here, I can see what I just did and how it ended up with this type. All right, I'm going to go back to SQL Source Control, right? Because I just changed one of those files, right? I just changed the data type in the file, but I haven't changed my database. So on the commit tab, it's saying, okay, you do have 2 commits that you can push to your remote. We're on topic 1 branch. But if I go to the Get Latest tab, it notices, this is very helpful because I might want to do some local testing. It notices, hey, you have something here in your local database. This is different. So I do want to go ahead and apply this change to my local database, and it warns me if this is a dangerous operation, right? Which is a good thing to know. So if this was an existing column in production, if this has already been in production and I'm changing the data type of it, I will also need to be aware of this for deployment as well, right? In this case, we're kind of simulating 2 people were confused over who added the column and what data type would it be. All right, so now I've got everything applied to my dev database, and I want to go ahead and push it up to source control. I can push it through SQL Source Control. If I happen to already be working here, I can go ahead and click push. Of course, in VSCode, I could click push there as well. All right, so now how do we create a pull request? Well, this will look different depending on what version of Git you are using. How is it hosted? Who is hosting it? What flavor of Git is it? Is it GitHub? Is it GitLab? Is it Azure DevOps? So here in my repo, in Azure DevOps, a lot of the hosts are doing similar things to this now. It's very helpful. It notices, hey, you just updated this topic branch. Would you like to create a pull request? So I can very simply click here to create the pull request process. I did not have to do anything special in Azure DevOps to get it to pop this button up. Pull request workflows are very popular and very common with Git. So this is just something that a lot of these do. So I can click that button to create a pull request, or I can go over to pull requests here and say create new. So I'm going to say create a pull request. And up here at the top, I can change this, like depending on what the workflow is. Let's say I'm using more of a Git flow workflow, which has a develop branch and main branch. I might want to merge into develop. So I might want to set merge. I want to request to merge this topic branch into develop. I might want to do that. In this case, we're just merging into main. I'm going to say adding column, right? Super meaningful there. We can add reviewers. A lot of these workflows, the tools allow you to have reviewers automatically assigned. So people don't have to remember. You don't have to think about it. Very, very cool. You can link work items. You can do all sorts of stuff. And again, when I click create here, I could have this automatically run a build, clone an environment, run a deployment to that environment, all sorts of things. Now, whoever reviews this, they can see the files that have been updated here. They can see the changes that have happened, right? So I overwrote this change that was already in main. I said, no, it should be like this. It should be like this. That's what I figured out. And conversation can go back and forth. They also, before this actually goes into main, they also can pull topic 1 branch down and they can work with it if they want. They can apply it to a database. It's really powerful. So that's part of the beauty of working in these feature branches. When everyone agrees that this looks good, the change request can be approved and completed. And when you complete this, you get to decide how do you want to merge this in to wherever you're merging. So you've got a couple options here. There is a little bit of documentation on them, which I think is really convenient. And it's really about how much of the history of what happened in this topic branch do you want to include, right? Do you want to make it look really simple when people look at the history of the main branch? That is easier to comprehend what happened in main, but it doesn't contain the whole story of everything you did in your feature branch. It's really a philosophical choice. I actually do think feature branches can get pretty messy. So a lot of people do sort of say, okay, we don't actually want that whole history there. We are going to trust for people to add in the comments of the pull request and maybe even on a customized merge commit message details of why this ended up like this. But the decision for you will probably also depend on how long do these feature branches live, how complex is the history of them. Right, so we can make sure everything is approved and closed, and you do have the option to delete that feature branch when you're done with it as well. Thanks for joining me for this video on how to manage conflicts in Git with SQL Source Control. I'm Kendra from Redgate's Advocate team. I'll see you in another video soon. Bye, folks.